Hello everyone, this is Chhata from Nutanix. Today I'm presenting a demonstration for microsegmentation. This new feature has been introduced for tech preview in version 5.5. If you want to repeat this demonstration in your lab, make sure that you have upgraded your AOS, HV and Prism Central to the versions that are highlighted in the slide. In our demonstration, we have 5 virtual machines that will be involved in the demonstration. They are being part of 2 different VLANs, VLAN 30 and VLAN 31, with the IP addresses highlighted in the slides being assigned and allocated to them. Initially, there are no security policies being configured, and there is an inter-VLAN routing configured on the network side. So initially, all the VMs will be able to ping and reach to all of the other VMs. We log into the Prism Central to explore the lab environment, and I'm applying a filter to look out for VMs that contains in the name micro-segmentation, and we have 5 VMs with the allocated IPs as shown, and we have CentOS Demo 1, Demo 2 and 3 are on VLAN 30 with the following IPs, and Demo 4 and Demo 5 are on VLAN 31. As you can notice on the right hand side of this table, none of these VMs have any categories assigned to it. We will start assigning those categories later on in our upcoming tutorial. Just to check that there is IP connectivity, we will launch the console of the first VM, and from there we will start pinging the IPs of the rest of the VMs. So this is the IP of Demo 2, it's reachable. IP of Demo 3, it's reachable. Demo 4, reachable as well, and finally Demo 5. So all of the VMs are able to communicate with each other. We will later on start introducing security policies to limit this communication. The first step in the microsegmentation configuration is to configure your categories. Those are tags that will be assigned to the VMs, and when you create security policies, all of the policies will be applicable for the appropriate tags, as it will be shown later on. So you need to start specifying your categories and defining the values for each category, and you will find some system defined categories, and as well you can create user defined categories as it will be shown in the coming video. Log into Prism Central, go to the Explore tab, and you will find the tech preview features, the security policies, which we'll cover later on, and the categories which we are about to discuss. So as you can see, there are some predefined, system-defined categories that you can edit and add values to them. As well, you can add your own customized categories. So if you click the app type, for example, category, here the values are the different applications and workloads that you can have in your environment. There are some predefined values, and you can update and start adding more workloads and more applications. Example here, we will go and add, for example, new workload, which is maybe Citrix VMs. Click the plus sign to add more, and for example, we define web servers, and then I press save to add those categories. To add those values for this category. So I have the app type and I have the categories. On the right hand side, for every value for this category, you'll find the associated entities. Right now, we don't have any VMs that are being mapped to those categories. One of the predefined categories is the environment. You have production, staging, testing. You can update, for example, this and add an extra value, and in our scenario here, for example, we will define DR, a disaster recovery, for example, environment. In addition to this, you can create your own customizable category. We will need to give it a name, a location in our case. You need to define a description and a purpose for that. This option can't be left blank. You need to specify a value. So here we are identifying the workloads by which branch location, and first value will be Dubai, second value will be Abu Dhabi. And this is how we can manage categories and update their values. In the upcoming section, we will be investigating the isolation policy, where you can isolate two different environments from each other. And for such demonstration, we will start creating two separate environments, an SQL environment and Citrix environment. So in the upcoming demonstration, we will see how can you assign VMs to specific values of your categories, and I will be assigning VM1, 2, and 4 to be part of the SQL environment, while VM3 and VM5 to the Citrix environment. Then we will see later on how we can isolate between those two environments with our isolation policy. We will start by exploring the VMs. So I will apply a filter to search only for the VMs with the name containing micro to narrow down my results, and I will apply a customized focus to look for specific parameters. I'm mainly looking for the categories. You click on a specific VM and then on the more and then manage categories. On manage categories, you start searching for one or more of the categories that we have already configured. So I'm searching for SQL. I'm going to save and allocate this category. So now this VM is being tagged as part of the SQL environment. Similarly, I'll go and assign the rest of the categories according to our scenario for the other VMs that we have. So CentOS 2, Demo 2 is also part of the SQL environment. 3 would be expected to be part of the Citrix environment, so we'll search for Citrix. And then don't forget to save. And similarly, we will apply for Demo 4 and Demo 5. Simple and easy. You can add multiple categories, as we will see later on in an upcoming video. Now I'm ready to proceed forward with the policy creation, and this will be explained later on. So you can go back to the categories to view the assignments. So as you can see here, Citrix, there are two members, two VMs, and you click on them, you see who are the members. Similarly, you can go and view the other category, which is SQL, and we have 3 members in this category. Now it's the time to create my security policy. So under Explorer, and you'll find on the left hand side security policies, where you can create a new security policy. And we have 2 types of them. We will investigate both of them, but we will start with the isolation policy. In the isolation policy, you need to define policy, unique policy name, and the purpose can't be left blank. You have to specify a description or a purpose for this policy. So the purpose of this policy is to isolate our 2 workloads, the Citrix and SQL. They can be any two other workloads in your environment. So you search for the 2 categories that you want to isolate. So you just search for the workload, select them. You can apply this policy within a subset, and I will show that later on in an upcoming video. You can apply the policy, or you can just monitor the traffic to see what are the traffic workload that's going between the two tiers. So right now this policy is being applied, and the two environments are supposed to be isolated right now. Let's go and check. So I'll go back to my VMs, and those are the VMs in the SQL. You can search for all of them to see all of the VMs. I will remove the SQL from the filters, and now I have all of my VMs. This part is related to the SQL environment. We'll go and launch its console, and let's see, will it be able to ping any VM that's part of the Citrix or not. So pinging 10.30.30.11, which is part of the same SQL domain, which is CentOS 2, it's fine, expected. But pinging .12, which is part of the Citrix environment now, is not working. There is no traffic being allowed between the two environments, and this is a proof that the isolation policy is activated. Similarly, I'm pinging CentOS 4, which is part of the SQL environment, same environment, it's reachable, but pinging CentOS 5, which is part of the Citrix as well, it's also unreachable. So the policy is active. So in this part, we want to test the immunity of the micro-segmentation policy against the host and the VM host migrations. So we will prove that the security pulses are centrally managed and they are migrating with the VMs when they move from one host to another without any need for any manual intervention from the administrator to reinforce them. So back to CentOS 1, which is part of the SQL environment, and I will try to ping one of the Citrix VMs. So I'll ping CentOS 3 on 10.30.30.12, and as expected, because of our policy in action that no ping, let's try to migrate this VM, CentOS 3 for example, which is right now on host 1-3. I'll go to this VM and I will execute a migration to a new or to a different host. The migration is executed now as a job in the background, and we're gonna wait just for a couple of seconds, and as you can see, the host now has been changed to cluster 1-4. Let's go back to our VM and try to ping, and as expected, still unreachable. So the policy is still in action whether the machine has migrated or not. We need to test as well the immunity of micro-segmentation configuration against the intended IP changes or even the unintended IP changes. This is a great feature for the micro-segmentation since the policies are not tied to IPs. Instead, they are tied to tags. So whether your IP has changed, whether statically or via DHCP, this has nothing to do with the policy, and we wanted to show that. So right now, again, the policy is still in action. I cannot ping from my SQL environment, my Citrix environment, and the IP address I'm trying to ping of micro-segmentation demo 3 is .12 as shown in this table. Let's go inside this VM and try to manually and intentionally change the IP, trying to break down the policy, assuming that we are dealing with the old school of applying access control lists, which are linking the policy to specific IPs. So I'll go and edit the networking configuration file, change the IP address from 10.30 to 30.12. I'll change it to 13. I'll save this and then restart the networking services on this server. Let's make sure that the new IP address is in action, and yes, the IP has changed to .13. Now let's go back to my CentOS 1. But instead of pinging .12, this will be an unreachable IP anyhow. Let's try to ping .13, and as you can see, it's unreachable, and the policy is not impacted by the IP changes. So this is a great feature for the microsegmentation, that the policy is linked to tags and not to IPs. If I just go and remove this, the policy is related to tags, not the IP. So once I remove the tag and I go back to microsegmentation 1, I should find the ping available, and as you can see, it's reachable back. I'll just go back and reapply my category, my tag, and go back to microsegmentation 1, see the impact on the ping, and as you can see, ping has stopped. Let's stop this ping and start a new one, and it's unreachable. Let's proceed forward to scenario 2, and in this scenario we are going to complicate it a little bit by adding another type of categories to my VMs in addition to the previously allocated tags and categories. I'm going now to add VM1, 2 and 3 to be part of Dubai branch, while VM4 and VM5 to be part of Abu Dhabi branch. Then I want to see how can I modify the isolation policy to restrict its action to be only applicable within one branch only. So we will go to our VMs and modify the categories. So I'll just apply the filter and the focus view. So as you can see on the right hand side, we have the categories just for SQL and Citrix, and with the policy that was previously created to limit the communication between the two environments, as we have previously seen. As you can see, the ping is not successful, which means that our policy is still in action. Let's go now to our VMs, the 5 of them, and start adding the extra category of the branch location of Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So according to my scenario, second scenario, I'll go to CentOS 1 and I'll make it part of Dubai. Same will be for CentOS 2 and CentOS 3. The 3 of them will be part of Dubai branch. While CentOS Demo 4 and Demo 5 will be configured in Abu Dhabi branch. As simple as this. Now I need to modify my policy to start restricting it within the scope of a specific environment. So my policy is that I want to block the communication between SQL and Citrix, but only within Dubai or within Abu Dhabi. So let's go to our policies, and as you can see, we have the policy one. I'll just delete this policy, and let me show you something. When you try to delete a policy, you need to confirm that to Prism by typing delete in uppercase. So just we refresh, and as you can see, when the policy is deleted, you are expecting the ping to work now. Just ping, and it's successful as expected. Now let's go and create the new policy with this restriction. Just refresh the prism, and the old policy has gone. I'll create a new policy, the type isolate. I'll give it a new name. Maybe this is isolation policy number 2. And in this time, I will isolate the SQL and the Citrix environment, but only in Dubai. I will keep them able to reach to each other in Abu Dhabi. So I want to restrict SQL and Citrix, and then with the optional checkbox, I can say that this is only in Dubai, and then you can apply now. And the policy has been applied. So in Dubai, we restrict SQL to communicate with Citrix. Let's go and check that. Back to my VMs, back to my micro-segmentation VMs, applying my focused view. I'll go to first VM, which is SQL in Dubai. I'll try to ping Citrix VM in Dubai, which is 30.30.13, and as you can see, the policy is working. However, if I try to ping the Citrix VM in Abu Dhabi, it's working as it is not restricted. My restriction is only within Dubai. I can reach as well to the other SQL tier in Dubai, as you can see here, and I can reach the other VMs in Abu Dhabi. So the only thing that has been restricted with the new policy is SQL to Citrix in Dubai. We have covered earlier the isolation policy of the micro-segmentation. However, there is another type of policy that you can apply, which is the protection policy, where you can select a specific application or category and start controlling and limiting the incoming and outgoing connections to this category. So let's see in the next part of the demonstration how can I achieve the following scenario. I will have SQL tier and we have web tier. We have both tiers in the production and in testing according to the slide and the legend in front of us. So let's see how can I limit the traffic with TCP and UDP port numbers on the incoming connections and the outgoing connections. So the first step to deploy the new policy is to first to modify the categories to match the new scenario. So I'll just look for my demo VMs, and then I will manually modify the categories to match the new scenario that was shown in the previous slide. So you have part of the production environment, you have an SQL server on CentOS Demo 1. Same applies as well for Demo 2. And then you have Demo 3, part of the web tier of the production. Then we'll go for Demo 4 and Demo 5. And instead of putting them in the production, this will be part of the testing environment. So we have an SQL in the testing environment. And the last one for Demo 5 will be a web server in the testing environment. So by then my categories are ready for all of the VMs. Now I'm ready to proceed forward for the creation of the security policy. So I will try to connect to those VMs from my machine. So as you can see, this is my IP address, totally different subnet than the subnets of the demo environments. So I can reach all of those VMs, demo 1, demo 2, demo 3, demo 4, and finally demo 5. So there is routing configured on the network side to enable such connectivity from my machine. Let's go and create a new policy. This time the policy is for protecting an application or securing an application. As we have seen previously, you have to define a name and you need to write a description in the purpose. So this is a web security policy. I need to protect my ingoing and outgoing connection to my web servers. And this will be the policy for the web servers in the production environment. So I will search for my application type web, and I will restrict this in only the production environment. Then I'll proceed with next. Then you will find on the next part of the wizard the place to define the inbound connections and the outbound connections. And the inbound can be one of two options, either to allow all connections or to whitelist, and in the whitelist you need to start adding the sources that are whitelisted and allowed for the inbound communication. You can add the source by one of two types, either by categories or by subnets. And you can mix and match. Let's start the subnet. So I will say that for this 10.30.30 and 10.31.31 as well, both of them are allowed to connect to the web server. So any other IP that's not being mentioned on that list won't be able to connect to the web servers. So you click on specific source, click on the add sign, and you can restrict the traffic either by TCP and UDP or even ICMP for pings, or you can make it like match all situation. You see the dotted line has been drawn between this source and the application. You need to do that for every individual source you have mentioned in the inbound side. Now, as you can see, we have two dotted lines from the two sources. Those are the guys that are allowed to communicate to my web servers in the production environment. Now the time to define the outbound, and you can allow a whitelist or you can allow for all. So for the whitelist, as we have seen, we can add by IPs or you can add by categories. So my policy is that I would allow only the web server to communicate to the SQL servers, but this time I will restrict it only to TCP port 22, which is the port used for SSH. In reality, it will be a totally different port, but this is just for the sake of demo. So this is a summary of the policy. If I'm sure about it, I'll just go and apply. I'll create another policy, but for the web tier in the testing environment. This time I'll call it web policy 2, and the purpose is to secure the web tier but in the testing environment. I'll need to select the application from the drop down list, select application type web, and restrict this to testing environment. There's next, and as we did last time, but this time I would like to demonstrate the allow all. I'm allowing all type of communication, so it's a less restrictive policy for the testing, for example, and I would do the same exactly outgoing policy. So I'm restricting the communication between web to SQL. By now my policy, or actually my policies are ready. and I have created the categories and attached them to the VMs, so the policies are activated. Now the time comes to check the validity of those policies by connecting to the VMs and testing the connectivity. So from my desktop, which is on a separate subnet other than the subnet that has been identified in the incoming policies of the production environment, let's try to ping any of the production web server. It's failing to connect. But if I check the ping to the web server in the testing environment, because it's going to allow all type of incoming connections, I can ping. I can ping. Let's go and test from inside the web server itself. So this is a web server in the production. I'm going to launch its console, and let's try to ping one of the SQL servers in the same production. So if I try to ping 10.30.30.10, for example, which is an SQL server in the production, it fails because we have allowed only TCP port number 22. So to test that, I'll SSH to this same IP, and as you can see, I'm being prompted for password, and I'm gonna type it, suppose it's correct, and I logged in. So the SSH worked, but the ICMP failed. This is exactly matching the policy.